And here comes Pam and John, and Priscilla already regretted she has somebody coming to the house, but she will be here on Sunday. And we have to think about something about Priscilla because she'll be leaving us to move closer to her family in Nashville permanently. Yeah. No, we're good. Well, good morning, everyone. And if you'll remember, you are my mishpacha, or in Yiddish, my whole mishpacha. That's how they say it. Like, are you going to invite the family? Yeah, the whole mishpacha. That's what we're going to do. Everybody's coming. And an extended family. That's how people lived back in the day. And we remember people living like that within a tight community. If possible, think about staying after church on Sunday for a quick, we're going to just decorate real fast and hang up the wreath for Advent, that sort of thing. And we're grateful. I'm so grateful that you all are here in the Word. And wherever you go, take us with you. Listen to us in Minneapolis. We'll get your grandson to listen too. That would be good. So today we're going to take the fifth commandment. Now, some of us know it as the fourth commandment. Oh, look who's here. But she was dressing the altar.
Hello.
But it doesn't matter, the fourth or the fifth commandment, it's the same thing. Honor your mother and father, which sounds very simple, right? Very simple commandment. But think again, because this is Torah, and it's never simple. And do you remember what the word Torah means? Torah. It's some people think it's just the Jewish section of the Bible, but Torah is the Jewish Bible, and it's not the Old Testament. It's only a part of the Old Testament, but a very important part, but it's still only a part. And the word Torah in Hebrew means teachings. This is to teach us. It doesn't mean law, although there are lots and lots of law in Torah. In the same way, there are lots and lots of laws in the gospel. We just don't listen to them at all. Love God and love each other. But Torah is often used to refer to the first 5 books of the Bible, or the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, which just happens to be our Bible too. Now, do you remember the 5 books of the Torah?
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
Woohoo! Yes, the Pentateuch. Pentateuch, that's the Greek, yeah, because we kind of get it from the Aramaic and Hebrew into Latin and Greek and then into English. So, yeah, the last book is Deuteronomy, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. So, of course, this is the Bible. So, all of the statements that we just heard about the Bible are still, to this day, being discussed and debated and discerned. And there's still not a lot of scholarly consensus when it comes to the Bible. But Torah is so much more than just the 5 books. Some say the entire Bible is Torah. Others say that Torah, and we've talked about this before, it's not just written, it's also oral Torah. But I think most of us can agree that Torah is not just written on paper in a book. That's not how God intended it. God intended it to be in our hearts, right? That's where it should be. And today we're looking at just one verse of Torah, which is Exodus 20, verse 12. And it's just 5 English words. And I love them, right? So today, yep, we're taking the 5th about mothers and fathers and children. But that doesn't mean that we'll ignore the other questions we brought up earlier about the Torah. So please, I always invite you to ask your questions and email them to me if you're listening from home. And we'll share them with the Mishpacha, which is our family, our extended family. And let me hear from you. Maybe you have some problems about this class that I can fix. Maybe we're going too slowly for your pace. We can speed it up. We could do a book a week if we wanted to. We could do anything we wanted to, or we could slow it down too. But why are we taking so long to get through the commandments? And I mean, good God, there's only 20 of them. No, there's only 10 of them, right? We could just zip through them in a flash. But what I'd like to know is for you to tell me what you already know about the commandments, and then we can skip what you know and just concentrate on the other parts. So here, first let me tell you my fifth commandment joke. Ready? A man is lying on the operating room table. He's about to undergo a very tricky surgical procedure, and it kind of is a matter of life or death. And the procedure will be performed by his son, the surgeon. And they're both a little nervous, which is understandable. But the father calms his son, the surgeon, with these words. He said, "Don't be nervous, son. I trust you with my life. I love you, and I know that you know if anything happens to me, your mother is coming to live with you." Right?
Where's the joke?
So you get the idea that the fifth commandment can be a little difficult for the doctor, right? If things don't go well with his father's surgery. But back to the fifth, just one of 10. And 10 only add up to, all the 10 commandments only add up to about 300 words in English. It's amazing, right? And it's very brief in Hebrew too. But they all fit on just 2 stone tablets. And they're not huge boulders, they're just sort of portable stone tablets. And 2 of them can be carried by an 80-year-old man up and down a mountain several times. But they're so important. And Martin Luther said of the 10 commandments, those who know the 10 know the whole scripture. They know all the affairs and all the circumstances, and they're able to counsel and to help and to comfort and to judge and to make good decisions. So God kept them brief and to the point so that we could know them better. So let's recap the first 4. I am the Lord your God. 1. You shall have no other gods. You shall not misuse the name of God. And you shall keep holy the Sabbath. And that brings us to today, the 5th. Honor your mother and father. But that's just the first part if you look at that verse, right? And we'll take a look at that. Did you ever wonder, as we're going through the commandments, where's the kids' version of this? Parents, you must honor your children. You must provide for your children. It's not in Torah, interestingly enough. Not that it's not a good commandment. Parents should provide for their children and honor their children, of course, but it's not a commandment. And probably because parents and kids are not considered equal in the Torah or in the Bible. Parents take precedence. Your kids are not your buddies when it comes to the Torah. They're not your BFFs. Not that there's anything wrong with being best friends with your kids, but the Bible makes a distinction with the 5th commandment, and we'll see this throughout our examination today. And there are serious penalties for kids who violate the 5th commandment. Very serious consequences. And we'll read about these in other books of the Bible, not just in Exodus. Honor your mother and your father. And that's a good thing, right? Absolutely. So we need this commandment because let's face it, especially today, kids are out of control, right? At least some kids. Other kids are out of control, but not mine. No, not our kids, right? But seriously, don't you look at TV sometimes and say kids today are terrifying? They're rebellious. So they're rebellious and they're disobedient to their parents and they're poorly behaved. And just so you know, that statement was found written in an Egyptian tomb that was written over 4,000 years ago. Some things never change. So let's take a look at the fifth. And here's the whole commandment: honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land which I, the Lord, am giving to you. Now, we usually leave off all the other stuff when we think about this commandment, right? After honor your mother and father, we sort of stop. But we don't include the stuff about living longer and the land, and that land would be the promised land. So this commandment is really very different from all the others. So let's look at it. First of all, look where we find it, in the number 5 spot on the first stone. So we get the feeling that this commandment was probably very important to God because he put it on the first tablet. And God placed it directly after the Sabbath commandment, the fourth one. Now remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And some rabbis say that the two commandments actually belong together. Remember a reason for keeping the Sabbath. What's the main reason we work for 6 and we rest on the 7th? Because of creation, right? Because of creation. God created for 6 days and then he rested on the 7th. Well, the 5th commandment makes clear to some people that there are actually 3 partners in creation, in your creation at least, right? There's God and your 2 parents, your mother and your father. So that kind of makes sense. And notice that the 5th commandment is written on the God stone. That's the first tablet, right? The first 5 that deal with humanity's required behavior toward God, not with the second of the 10, which deal with humanity's behavior toward each other. So why do you think parents are on the God's tablet?
Well, the respect that you show for your parents filters down to the respect that you have for
Creation.
creation.
Yeah, I think so too. And here's what the rabbis say. This is sort of a conclusion. Parents are actually God's emissaries on earth. They sort of serve as a bridge, right, between God and humankind. And also, parents serve as a bridge between the individual and society. Where do children learn first? In the home, right? With their parents as their first teachers. And this is where and how kids learn and practice ethics. Don't steal, don't fight your brother, and morals and rules and all the behaviors that are necessary to create and maintain a good society, which is a civil society. So parents, we have had the most amazing job of civilizing our children. And I think they're pretty civil. I know your daughter is definitely.
I can claim 2 out of 3.
Oh gosh, don't you
I
ever
can as
say
well.
which one.
He knows.
All right, so how do parents do a good job of civilizing their children? And this is interesting. We do a good job making our children civil by teaching them that they are not the center of the universe. Parents teach their children to say, I am part of the world, so I must share it. I didn't hear that a lot with my daughter. Mine, you know. So good parents raise good kids who build and maintain a good society. That's the hope, right? Which is sort of what God planned for all of us, I think, when he created us. So we can see this commandment is a hinge. It's that transition between God and humans who brought us into this world. And this commandment is also unique for at least two other reasons. The first of these is it's the only commandment that comes with a promise. If you obey this, God promises to do at least two things. If you obey, God will give you longevity. You're going to live a long life, right? And you're going to spend that long life in the land that God has given to you, the promised land. Now, what this commandment has to do with living longer or adding years to your life is anyone's guess. Because doesn't it seem that sometimes raising kids, it puts years on? I know it put lines on my face, but oh my gosh. Shelby, you're taking years out of my life. Definitely, it can be a trip, right? Rabbis and church fathers and the scholars never explain why they think God promises you two rewards if you keep this commandment.
Because they know how hard it is.
That's right. Look at God. He's got all these children out here. He knows. But there is modern speculation in scholarship. There is the notion, say the experts, that family integrity is crucial for a healthy society. We don't live as lone wolves. You know, you're allowed to have one lone wolf in a community, right? Mostly we live as a family, and households containing a mother and a father raising children is the ideal situation. And this dynamic is shown to be a vital protection for the longevity of the whole community. And there are so many peer reviewed surveys and studies that support this statement. Not a very popular statement to make. It makes you sound like a know it all, or, you know, I was blessed to have a husband who helped me raise a child. But statistically, there are so many statistics that support the idea that the breakdown of the nuclear family, and that's open for discussion, what a nuclear family is, but the breakdown of that signals the breakdown of a well-functioning society. Now, we won't wade through all that data because we can simply conclude with confidence that households that have two parents, two parent family, are far, far less likely to live in poverty. And families with two parents will be physically and spiritually more healthy than a single parent household. And these statistics are not just relevant for measuring modern family success. This was true in the ancient world too. Family integrity has always been a cornerstone of a well-functioning community. So a healthy family is part of a healthy community and a healthy nation. And this was true in Israel, ancient, true for us today in the United States. But not everyone says this, do they, right? This is a very modern subject of great debate, especially here in Florida and in Virginia, which changed a whole regime, a whole regime in Virginia in terms of the governorship. School choice and parental rights became a major issue, and why Glenn Youngkin is the governor there after years and years of not being a Republican governor. But places where parents have felt left out of the process of raising and civilizing their own children can be very hurtful to a community. And we've all heard the statement, it was very, very popular when Hillary Clinton was title of her book, actually, when she was first lady. It takes a village. And I think we can all kind of agree with that, right? It takes a village to raise a family. I think particularly back in the old days where everybody watched out for you. You couldn't get away with anything when you were a kid, right? Because the lady on the corner told your mother what you were doing when you swore you weren't doing it. But that doesn't seem to be happening Um, but I do think that we should all be responsible for each other. If you see a kid, a 5-year-old walking down the street at dusk, you're probably going to go out and grab that kid and hold him for the police or something. Take care of each other. Um, but many parents today are saying, yes, it takes a village, but the village can't take my kid. I am still in charge of my own child. Um, God gave me that responsibility when God made me his partner in creation of these children. So my kids belong to me and God, not to the village. Interesting, right? But those who support more village participation use modern statistics to show that the old ways just don't work anymore. So, do you think that the old fashioned concept of family has failed?
No,
No.
no.
No. That's interesting.
I think that part of the idea of the village, though, the community itself is different. I mean, I grew up in a small town, and I did know pretty much everybody. I definitely knew everybody in blocks around. And my mother and dad, my dad grew up there, so he knew everybody. If a date came to the door, the first thing he asked was, "Who's your father?" And then that decided
Who are your
whether or not I was
people?
actually going on the date or not. It was, but you knew everybody, and there was a sense of community. And I'm not sure that in all circumstances now they have that. You don't know your neighbor. You don't talk over the fence and have a relationship with them. People are moving in and out, and so you don't know whether or
Exactly.
not to trust the person who's grabbing your kid.
Exactly.
when they're walking down the
I
street.
I grew up in New York City. I mean, everybody in my neighborhood knew everybody. If your brother drove his bike when your mother said, "Don't you dare," yeah, everybody knew everybody. But it was communal. It was.
But that does still exist. We have baseball coaches and scout leaders and craft organizers and, all kinds of people are helping
Right.
to raise kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just
But
different.
they may not be your neighbors.
No,
And there's not as much, I don't even know if you use the word leeway or whatever. People aren't as
Trust.
able to comment on someone else's child at all either anymore.
Very
You know what I mean?
interesting.
Like if they're out in the neighborhood and a mother says, aren't you supposed to go home or whatever, be at home at 6 o'clock or what? You can, a lot of times, lots of people tell me that mother will come down and say, don't tell my kid where they have to be at 6
Isn't
o'clock.
that
There's a lot of pushback.
Isn't that
People
interesting?
don't want other people in their kids' business.
They don't want the village.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm telling you.
That's
Yeah.
right. This is my business. Interesting.
And they want this. They want to have the ability to govern per se what goes on with their kid, but then they want somebody else to raise that kid for a lot
They
of
want to
needs.
tell the teachers how to teach.
I'm not even talking. Yeah, or you feed my kid breakfast, or you feed my kid lunch. There's a lot of shoving. I think, from what I've watched, there's a lot of we want you to help us to some degree as part of this whole
Mhm,
village
that makes
concept.
Perfect
But on the
sense.
flip side, don't get my business part of it.
I
There's a lot going
wonder.
on.
I just wonder. Do I trust people? All the people in the community with a little one.
Right.
And what did we teach our kid? I always got the feeling that perverse people, there's more of them now, but I'm not sure that's true. It's more open. But what did we teach our kids? Stranger danger.
Yep.
But statistically, they're not the ones that prey on your children. It's the uncle so and so, or
The neighbor.
Bingo.
God, terrifying.
but so many
Terrifying.
parents are happy to abdicate that responsibility nowadays.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And my daughter just started teaching first grade.
Oh wow.
She's got 18 kids in her class, and 3 of them are major problems. Belligerent, incorrigible, autistic, just problems. And, her only, you can't beat the kids up, but her only recourse is to call the parents. And they don't care.
They say you handle
It's
it.
your responsibility. You're the teacher.
That's so interesting. Now, I taught high school, so, and I started teaching high school at 22, so we were kind of close in age. When I started, I was very mindful of the fact that if I called the parents about a kid, the kid was going to get beat that night. That's it. You were mean to Donya, blah blah blah, etc. But times changed within those 25 years, where if I could tell you, which I won't repeat, but this one young woman called me this string of, like, out of a sailor's mouth, and I had the parents come in, and I actually repeated everything that the kids said to me, and I thought they would be humiliated, but they said, well, what did you do to her to make her feel that? And I was like, whoa. I was like, I don't know.
But you have
It's
the opposite viewpoint too of people teaching their kids at home because they don't want the influences out there in the world.
like that homeschooling, right?
Homeschooling is just really,
huge.
really growing. Because the schools are a mess in a lot of places.
Yeah,
So we have two extremes, and what we're missing is the middle
it's
ground.
the middle.
Good way to put it.
And there are some modern scholars who say the old family is in trouble. There's a really high rate of divorce today. And this is what I came up with. 41% of marriages end in divorce, and that's just for the first marriage. But
More.
60% of second marriages. That shocked me. I thought the second marriage would get it right? But listen to this. 73% of third marriages fail. So people don't learn from their mistakes. Yeah, I'll try another one. That didn't work.
Well, it's the
Turn the
same way with having kids. Isn't she cute? Let's have another one.
Yeah,
Then you find out they're a whole lot of work for a whole lot of time.
that's right. And a fortune.
Yes.
So then you add to those statistics about divorce, the high number of unmarried parents. Somewhere around 1 in 4 households consist of parents who are not married to each other. And then there are families with just one parent in the house. But this is another sad one. 80% of single parent households are headed by single mothers. So that's a tough one. And statistics clearly show that children in these households are more prone to drug and alcohol addiction. Rates of suicide are much higher among these kids. And we could just go on and on. It's just no bueno. So we try to cope and we try to mend, and the village steps in to help where parents can't. And we say here in this country, I think a lot of people think, well, the village has become the government, right? We get extra food for our kids, we get special programs and all kinds of things. So the government sort of assumes some parental responsibilities. So for better or worse, the government becomes a parent to the child. And speaking of parents, modern statistics don't look good for us either. When parents get old, and we all do, this commandment is often ignored. Honor thy mother and their father. It's either ignored or it's downright broken. I mean, we just don't think about this a lot, but the commandment infers honor your mother and father for as long as you can, not for as long as they can provide for you, right? And it's so disturbing, but did you know that there are more than 5 million cases, 5 million, of elder abuse reported every year? But
There are a lot that aren't.
that's right. And experts say there are at least that many that are not reported. Who are you going to call? My kid just beat me. It's shameful. elder abuse, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, but also just passive neglect. It breaks my heart.
What if you have a parents that aren't worthy of honor?
Well, we're going to get to that
Okay.
actually. I personally don't know any of them, but
Me either.
we are not honoring our elders in this country. We're neglecting way too many of them, and we're not alone. I mean, modern societies. Now, did you know that 60% of all elder abuse is committed by a family member? That shocked me. And it's mostly motivated by stress or resentment or greed, but only 7% gets reported, according to the experts. So modern families are not following God's commandment of honor your mother and father. But what about the ancient families? Everything was fine back in the day, right? But no, there were plenty of problems. Different in many ways. For one, ancient families were much, much larger. That so called nuclear family with a mom, a dad, and 2.25 kids. Not typical then. Families were extended and intermingled. So members of the family were related by blood and marriage. So you didn't just marry the man or the woman, you married the whole mishpacha, right? And there were problems back then because times were hard and people were living in very hard places, and things like famines and epidemics and violence. I mean, it was a very violent. We tend to think we live in a violent world, much more violent then. Um, and this made it widows and orphans very, very difficult. And some communities did a better job of taking care of their widows and orphans. But dysfunctional families are not new. In fact, don't they almost seem biblical, right? From the minute we open the book. Literally, the very first family, Adam and Eve, second marriage, first one didn't work out, suffered from seeing their son Cain. What did he do? Fratricide, murdered his younger brother. And Noah had huge problems. And remember, God destroys the whole earth except for Noah. But very problematic family, especially Ham. Remember him? And Abraham, he didn't exactly win an award as the father of the year, right? He kicked out his first son, Ishmael, remember? Because Sarah said, "Get that kid out of my house." Sent him into the desert to die. And then what does he do to poor Isaac? Takes him to a mountaintop to kill him. Now we know Abraham didn't kill Isaac. And we know, however, that Isaac, if you keep reading, he had some psychological problems, Isaac. And they definitely carried over with his twins, right? Jacob and Esau. And then Jacob, remember his 12 sons, 4 different women with those kids. So 12 times more problems. So we can say that ancients had their issues too. And the extended family seems to have also extended the issues. But the family structure never did disappear, it endured. So what held it together? Well, sages say the rules of child rearing, discipline, a sense of duty to one's parents and to all the elders in the mishpacha, which is the extended family. But we can assume there were always problems, family problems. And Ezekiel, what a lunatic, but he writes, and I think this was kind of very true. Fathers and mothers, say Ezekiel, are being contemptuously ignored in our society. So interesting, even then. So there was a need, and a need for rules about parents and children and the family that called for honor, that would give value and respect to family members and mothers and fathers, and rules that deemed them worthy and totally ruled out rejection. Mom hit the road. God thought this was so important that he actually offers a reward for obeying the commandment, right? So with the fifth commandment, God affirms families and sets standards for parental care and nurturing children. And it's all based on unconditional love and respect and honor. And even though they're problems, and they're not new problems, we read all about parenting throughout Scripture, but we also see that those problems are not God's fault, right? They're our fault. So God gives us what we need to be good parents. God gives us the rules and the grace and the kindness and the forgiveness. And God models good parenting to us. God loves us and forgives us unconditionally. And these are the gifts of God's grace. So we need to be both receivers and givers of these gifts. We need to accept parents, appreciate parents, affirm parents, just like it says in the fifth. So let's look at what is not in the fifth commandment. What makes the fifth unlike all the others? Hint, it's not just what is in the fifth that makes it so different. It's what's not in there. Ready? Anyone want to tell us what we don't read here in Exodus 20:12?
Well, God's not in there.
Well,
Not
He-
mentioned.
I think I actually love this commandment. Honor your father and your mother that you
Yeah.
may long endure on the land which the Lord your God is giving you. So what's not there?
If they're good parents.
It's one with a promise, two promises, right? A long life and the promised land. But what don't we see? We don't see the word not.
Oh, thou shalt not.
Not. It's implied, don't do all these bad things, but God doesn't say thou shalt not. Do not do this and do not do that, right? Right? No kill, no steal, no adultery. But look at the fifth. There's no there. Yeah. So the fifth has a promise, and it's positive, not negative. So this is a commandment to do your duty. Don't debate it, just do it. And don't just do it cheerfully, say the rabbis, because you wouldn't be here without your parents. Not to mention, when you honor your parents, you also honor God, right? You wouldn't be here without any of them. So the Talmud says, and remember, the Talmud is an explanation of Torah. There are three persons in the creation, or three partners in the creation of a person: God and the two parents. So honor them all, and not just with your thoughts, but with your actions, and with your money, and with your time, and with your patience. And just give them the respect that they deserve. And just so you know, it doesn't matter if you think that they don't deserve your respect, okay? Torah says even wicked parents deserve to be honored.
Wow.
To be clear, Torah doesn't say we have to love our wicked parents, but it clearly says we have to honor them. Even if they're sinners, sinning parents get honor. And that goes for anyone who has parented you, not just your biological parents, but step parents and older siblings who might have helped raise you, and of course, grandparents. We have to honor them all. And this is important. This is mentioned at least 8 times in the Bible. The law to honor your earthly and your heavenly parents. And this is an equal opportunity law. Both your mother and your father get honor with God. And this doesn't, yep.
Yeah, I thought honor was love, respect, obey. You're saying honor may not include love.
Oh no, it doesn't include love at all. Think about the people that we don't even know and we honor, right? When you go into a courtroom, you honor the rules of the court, whether we think we should stand up or not, or we turn our cell phones off because the judge, right? No, this commandment never says love. Of course, we hope we do, right? And this doesn't end. It's not over when your parents die, exactly, okay? Not completely, because even after your parent dies, the Torah says that you have to say Kaddish for 11 months after they die. You have to say prayer, a special prayer. And every year you are required to honor the anniversary of their death. We kind of do that in a way, with our parents, I think. But
Not always formally, though. Not always formally. but
No.
We do.
I think more we used to do it. I remember it as a kid.
And people used to go to the cemetery, and they don't do that very often anymore.
Well, have you ever heard what is a Kaddish? Kaddish,
Prayer for the dead?
Kadd. Kaddish is a prayer. And it's very interesting and a very moving prayer that you recite for the dead during Jewish prayer services. And it's also called a mourner's Kaddish because it's recited during almost all the mourning rituals, like funerals and any memorial services. And it's interesting because the prayer for the dead never mentions the dead or dying. Instead, it proclaims the greatness of God. So when you say the Kaddish, you're actually talking to God and telling God that even though your faith has been tested by your loss, I miss my mom. So you don't say that, but you're telling God by praising him, I never lost my faith in you, God. I know that you still love me. I affirm your faith in me. I affirm your greatness, God, when you say Kaddish to God. So the fifth commandment, many have called this commandment, I'd be interested in what you think, they've called it the most important and yet the most misunderstood of all God's commandment. So we can see why it's important. Good society needs good people. But why do you think it's misunderstood? Why do you think some people label, and you came up with it, I think, before when you asked. Yeah, rabbis say, because the fifth commandment does not command us to love, right? Doesn't say you have to love your parents. They
That's just to love everyone, though.
love, yeah, but it does, but it's not commanded. Not love.
Each other.
Jesus comes through with that a little bit later at the sermons on the mount and on the plain, but the 10 commandments doesn't say love your mother and your father. It says honor your mother and the father. So here's what the rabbis say about that. Why doesn't it say love? Because, say the rabbis, love is a response to love. And sadly, some parents are not capable of loving anything, including their children. Did you hear about this woman, Susan? I forgot her last name.
Yeah.
Huh.
I had totally forgotten about
Oh,
that.
really?
Was that
Those two
30
little
years ago?
boys.
She drowned.
I had, for
drove
those
the
of
car
you
and
who
hit-
don't know, this woman was up for parole 20 or 30
30 years ago.
It's the first time she could come up for parole.
She strapped her 2 babies, beautiful boys,
Yeah. Yeah.
drowned them because apparently a boyfriend just thought they were getting in the way.
Oh, now that part I did not know. I didn't know there
She
was somebody else.
intentionally. Why would she think she should? I don't get
Oh,
it.
that's not the first time that's happened, that's happened.
Was they? She wasn't granted. I don't think.
No,
I don't
no,
think
they
she got
didn't
it.
grant it.
But she
Um,
can go up again every 2
In 2
years.
years, yeah.
I was shocked.
I think a lot of parents don't realize what's involved with being a parent, and they just get overwhelmed and go nuts.
I got to throw this one out there now that you said that. How many times have you heard on television or read in the paper or whatever about, I'm throwing the term out, celebrity or whatever, and they'll have a baby, but they'll say, I want to have a baby, but I'm not ready for a commitment of marriage. Or, you know what I'm leaning into?
one of-
Oh,
And I'm
marriage
thinking,
is so much
are you
easier
kidding
than.
me? You don't think raising a child is
Commitment.
a
If they
bigger
have so much
commitment?
money, they can get all kinds of nannies.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a big, I don't get it. I just can't imagine why you wouldn't think that's humongously bigger than being married to somebody.
Yeah,
Raising a
I
human
can
being.
kind of picture it because
You're right, they're the names.
our daughter's birth mother, we adopted Shelby, was 15, and Shelby was her second child.
Oh, boy.
They lived in the mountains in Vallarta in Mexico, so poor. And the parents, I never met Shelby's grandparents, so maternal grandparents. But they took the first baby, a boy, but they said we can't possibly feed another child. So that's where we came in and said, well, we can, but we tried to adopt Shelby's mother too, but she didn't want to come with us. We wanted to bring her here, and I don't know. It just all happened. How would that have worked out? Would we have adopted Shelby as our child, or would we have just supported them? But from the very beginning, she wanted to get back into town, and have some fun. She was a kid, with no sense.
Yes.
Interesting. But I think it is possible to hear the rabbis when they say, and when we think about it, love is a response to love. And sadly, some people cannot. They're just not capable of loving anything, including their own children. And we can't love someone who is unloving.
And those gals can't love because they weren't loved.
Yeah,
Yep.
we don't know how.
We can honor them, not kick them in the shins, but honor is different than love, I think,
The way you live your life,
is in
honor your
honor
parents.
parents.
So
Yep.
really, your whole life, even if you're not thinking I'm honoring my parents, but you're living a good life because of how you're raised.
Yes.
Even if they didn't teach you, sit down and this is what you do. Just the way they live.
Of course.
And sometimes it's a response to not live the way they lived. My parents did such and such, I will never do that.
Right.
And sometimes I
Right.
thought,
So doing your duty to your parents is doing what you should do, not what you want to do or would love to do. I would love to love my parents. My mother was 15 when I was born, so she had such a hard time thinking that Shelby's mother gave her up. It's like, oh, you couldn't get her home. But fortunately, my mother married my father and had two more of us. So how often do we hear today, just do what you love? Just live your life doing what you love. Kind of told our kids that, right?
A dangerous statement.
Yeah, right. It sounds so nice.
Don't tell your kids that,
No,
because they'll do it.
they do it in spite of us, right? Well, we tell our kids sometimes, do what you love. And that's the secret to being happy. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. But that's not,
Idyllic.
yeah, that's not biblical either. That's not God's words. We know God doesn't want us to be unhappy and miserable. But the Bible, and you can check it out cover to cover, the Bible never says Spend your life doing what you want to do so that you can be happy. That's not in Torah, and it's not in any of the wisdom literature. You won't find it in Paul for sure. He never did anything, and it's not in the Gospels. So the Bible, right,
Or Proverbs.
or Proverbs. Most of those Proverbs, it's so interesting, are from Egypt. The Jews just carried them with them. But the Bible does talk a lot about duty. And so does Mother Teresa. Remember her? She was such a.
Yes.
She sounds so much like Paul when she writes, "Happiness is the natural fruit of duty." It's so wise, right? And actually, it's very beautiful and it's necessary. Do your duty and do it in a loving, joyful manner that will bring you happiness. And that's
Mother
biblical.
Teresa.
Yes. Oh, but she said a whole lot of other things too. She was very feisty. So I like the fifth commandment a lot because I think it teaches us the importance of gratitude. Simply seeing what you have. Everything that you have, seeing them as gifts that are freely given. And you didn't earn one of them, right? And you could never hope to earn them. So we just see them as gifts of God's grace. So if you can, call your mother or your father and tell them that you love them. But if they're already with God, they already know you love them. But you could send them a love message. You can do something here that they always told you to do, or, to keep them with you. Tell them that they know that you are grateful. And let's I was talking to two people about a movie that they recently saw, and we talked about, I would love to get it and show it here. It's The Greatest Christmas Pageant Ever.
The one that
It's
just
the new
came
one,
out.
the new one.
Was
We saw it Tuesday.
you saw it? Oh, great.
Is that the name of the movie?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
It's
The
based on a
Greatest
book.
Christmas Pageant Ever.
Oh.
And I was driving to work. So Chris and Chris, people who have the cute little granddaughter, come to services here. They told me about it, and I would love to go see it. And so I was driving to work yesterday, and on the radio comes a song from the movie, which the DJ said, "Yeah, my 5-year-old is singing this song. You curse me, I bless you." Do you remember that song from the movie? It just sounded, you turn your back on me, I open my arms to you. It's like everything you wanted to teach your children. So tell us, did you love it? Did you laugh like crazy?
Is it in
Tears
the
at the end.
theater or
Oh.
on
Yeah,
TV?
at the end was very moving.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Is it on TV or in the
It's
theater?
on-
Oh,
it's
it's
on
in
the theater right
very
now.
movie.
At Spotlight Theater.
He cried at the end.
Oh.
Oh, I thought it
No,
was
he had
a
never
comedy.
he didn't know the story at all, and I did.
Oh,
Oh.
But they had some different things added to it. It was very well done.
It's in theaters now?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, but I think if you Google it, it was a short story, and I remember the short story, and it reminded me teaching in a community socioeconomically deprived, that so when we had our potluck, kind of everybody bring something, some of the kids came in and like took a ham out of their jacket, which they went in the grocery store and where did you get that? That kind of thing. And that was that kind of a family, right? They had
The Herdmans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
yes, they had a hard time. So I guess it'll come on.
I think it was Hallmark actually had a movie a few years ago that was sort of like this. I mean, it was called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, but I don't know if it was really based on the book or not, but basically the same.
Did you get the feeling that money and status and prestige played a big part in how they were accepted? The
Yeah.
family?
I don't know about
Yeah.
money so much as,
They
They
were
were
they
just-
were looked down at.
they were looked down at. Yeah, the
They're
rest-
poor.
the rest of the people were like
Yeah.
normal middle class, I would say.
And they were-
Middle class
Like
people.
us, like
Yeah.
just
And
kidding,
just like coming to this church, all of a sudden 5 rowdy kids came
Yeah,
in.
They were
you know.
rowdy, mean.
What would
protective
you,
of
I
each
mean, it
other.
would be a different thing for you too, like, oh, what do we do now? We got these 5 kids here.
but they became a mishpacha. They became a family.
They accepted them at the end, and they saw.
Spoiler
They s-
alert.
It was just-
Yeah, don't tell it. Don't
Yeah,
tell
no,
it.
no,
So-
It's worth
It's
seeing.
very
yeah.
good.
Started out slow, but really good.
It's very good.
Now, what made you go see it? You heard about it?
Well, I read the book, so I know
Okay,
the story. And then
gotcha.
I thought I'm going to go and see if I should take my 5-year-old to it or not, because I didn't know, and I don't know if he would get the whole thing. So that's kind of, I thought, well, if it was good, I would take him. Well, I don't know if he's even going to be there yet then, but anyway.
It's going to be,
and
I'm
he
sure.
didn't even know the story, so I said, well, you got to go and see it.
Interesting. I know that Elaine is going to be watching Grinch for
Oh, yes.
Christmas.
The Grinch
That was
That
my
Stole
dad's
Christmas.
favorite.
Oh yeah, they love that.
That was my husband's favorite. I mean, that was a tradition that we had to watch that. So this year I bought family pajamas, Grinch pajamas for all of my sister's girls and her granddaughter, and the 5 of us are gonna watch The Grinch That Stole Christmas.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Well, here's my favorite Christmas movie, probably my favorite movie. And I think it teaches the importance of family and community and the need to help each other because we are all in this together and we're all good and deserving of help. Everyone counts or no one counts. So this is a movie that I think is full of grace, the grace of one life, of one person who touches so many others. So it's a movie that teaches wonderful life lessons. And does anyone know the name of the movie?
Wonderful.
George,
Oh, yeah, It's a Wonderful
Wonderful
Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
That's another
I just
tradition.
love that movie. George Bailey and his guardian angel Clarence, who consults with the heavenly expert, right? Joseph? Well, leave it to modern so-called experts known as social scientists. So they rewrite the Bible, but they also try to reframe the whole lesson of faith. And they give that film a very negative interpretation. And they claim that the lead character actually suffers from a mental illness. And they even give, I remember this in grad school, they give the mental illness a name, and it's called the George Bailey Syndrome. And it's a real thing. Have you heard of it?
No.
Now we see George honoring his parents and his wife and his children and helping his neighbors. And he's practically selfless. And all these experts tell us that George's selflessness is not good. It's not a good thing. It's actually pathological. We should all be selfish, not selfless. We should all demand and insist on good care, good self-care, good community care at all times. So they say that this movie should not be called It's a Wonderful Life. It should be called It's a Thankless Life. Because
Great Christmas music.
George makes the mistake of putting everyone ahead of himself. So, but at least he has St. Joseph and Clarence, right, to help him. But he's still suffering from pathology. So his dream of becoming a doormat has come true, right? He's a martyr. And Clarence actually functions as his enabler. And Clarence shows George that the world would simply fall apart without him. Everyone else is incompetent. Only George Bailey can save the world. Can you imagine that beautiful film? It practically ruined it for me, right?
So what was
So-
the name of this movie?
It's a Wonderful Life, but it's reinterpreted by some social scientists who study pathologies. What?
But was it actually made into?
Oh no.
Oh,
Oh, no, no, no.
Okay, 'cause I'm going through something. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Commentary.
So I think it's good that we read our Bibles and hear the Word of God and give thanks for the beautiful, wonderful gifts of God's world, because it really is a wonderful life when we see our life as one of God's gifts. Now, do you think that we, very well educated Christians, really need all these laws and all these commandments and all these duties, since Jesus came and gave us grace, right? And grace gives us a wonderful life on earth and in heaven. So, what else could we possibly need? Do you think we need all these laws about what we've been going through?
That's why we need to break these laws. That's why we need the forgiveness and
Yep.
the salvation.
Well, interesting. Because we know a lot of bad people who break every law, who get everything they ever wanted, right? We know them. But I like the way Maimonides addresses the question. He's a 13th century rabbi. He says this: every day of your life, when you get up and you get ready to go into the world, you should think to yourself, my deeds really are perfectly balanced now. The good deeds on this side of the scale and my sins on this side of the scale, they're balanced, right? So that's a good image. But what you do next will tip the scales. So which way do you want your scales to tip, right? If you go out, you want them to go to the good side. So every day it is your job to tip the scales and promote grace and beauty and kindness and improve the world. And then you can truly say, this life that I lead is a wonderful life. I hope, wish we could have, we were going to have a movie night one time. So next week we're going to do the do's, back to the do's and the do nots, thou shalt nots, and we start.
No.
Oh, it's Thanksgiving, the following week. But we'll start with an easy do not. And I wager everyone will take a polygraph, right, to prove that you've never violated the sixth commandment. Or do you even know anyone who has ever violated the sixth commandment? Do you remember what it is? Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not murder. So has anyone here violated that? I don't want to know.
I've thought about it.
In your heart.
Yeah. So next week, I wish you a Shavua Tov. Have a good week. No, 2 weeks. What is everybody staying home for Thanksgiving?
We're close by. I mean, we're gonna be.
Where are you gonna be?
Here's what.
Oh, no.
Going to the club with a group of friends. My 98-year-old friend, I'll pick him up because he knows all those people. But then I was telling Elaine, I bought a turkey to cook on Friday for me and Lucy. I don't know what I was thinking. So
What time would you like us to be there?
yes. But you know what I said? Maybe I'll use it. We'll do something. You are all cordially invited, of course, to the open house. I have one tree up and lit and decorated already. I put a tree in every room of the house. And 2:00 on what? I can tell you what date. Do you remember
14th.
the 14th? 2:00 on the 14th. And Lois
Going to
is.
your house to see the trees?
Yeah.
I'm writing that one down.
Oh my gosh! I didn't tell you.